In a climate-controlled vault in Berlin sits a roll of papyrus that scholars filed away as a collection of fairy tales. Its catalog number is Papyrus Berlin 3033. Most people walk right past it, but hidden inside it is a passage where the most powerful king in the ancient world demands to know one thing: the location of a set of sealed chambers. Chambers, he believes, are connected to his own pyramid. And nearly 4,000 years after that papyrus was written, machines that detect particles from outer space found voids inside the Great Pyramid of Giza, in exactly the kind of places no one was supposed to look. This is the story of the document we call the Westcar Papyrus, a scroll that was dismissed for almost 2 centuries as campfire fiction. A scroll that describes hidden chambers, a locked chest of flint, and a king obsessed with secrets buried in stone. And a scroll that may quietly record something else, not just what lies beneath and within Giza, but when it was closed off from the world, and why. By the end of this investigation, you'll understand why some researchers now read this papyrus less like a storybook and more like a memory. A memory of rooms that were measured, sealed, and deliberately forgotten. Here's where it begins. In 1824, a British traveler named Henry Westcar acquired an Egyptian papyrus under circumstances that were never fully documented. No excavation report, no find spot, no tomb number, just a roll of ancient paper changing hands. Decades later, it passed to the German scholar Adolf Erman, and in 1886 it entered the Berlin Museum, where it was assigned the number P, Berlin 3033. 12 columns of text survive. The beginning is missing. The ending is missing. What remains was written in hieratic script, most likely during the Hyksos period, around the 17th or 16th century BC. But here's the detail that matters. The language is older. The stories themselves reach back to the Old Kingdom, to the court of Khufu, the king who built the Great Pyramid around 2560 BC. Which means this papyrus is a copy of a copy, a tradition passed down for 1,000 years before someone finally wrote down the version we have. Scholars called it King Cheops and the Magicians, tales of wonder told to entertain a bored pharaoh. Egyptologists classified it as literature, entertainment, fiction, and for most of the text, that's fair. There's a story about a wax crocodile, a story about a lake folded in half to retrieve a lost pendant, court magic, palace gossip. Then, the fourth tale begins, and the tone changes completely. If you find buried history as unsettling as I do one thing for me before we go further. Subscribe and turn on the bell, because investigations like this one get buried twice. Once in the sand, and once in the archive. Now, back to the papyrus. In the fourth tale, a prince tells Khufu about a living man, not a legend, named Jedi, a commoner, 110 years old, living in a town called Jed Sneferu. Khufu sends for him. And when the old man arrives at court, the king doesn't ask for entertainment. He asks a question. He asks JD if it's true that he knows the number of the secret chambers of the sanctuary of Thoth. Stop on that phrase, the number of the secret chambers of the sanctuary of Thoth. In the Egyptian text, the word is ip-wat, and translators have argued about it for over a century. Some render it as chambers, some as shrines, some as the locks or seals of a sacred enclosure. But everyone agrees on what Khufu wants it for. The text says it plainly. Khufu had been searching for these chambers because he wanted to copy them, to reproduce their design, for his own horizon, his own monument, his pyramid at Giza. For decades, scholars dismissed it as symbolic, a king seeking divine wisdom, nothing more. But read it again as a builder would. The greatest construction project in human history is underway, and the king is hunting for the floor plan of a sealed, sacred structure so he can replicate it inside his own. That is not a fairy tale request. That is an architectural one. They weren't guessing, they were recording. And the papyrus contains 3 details, 3 clues that get stranger the closer you look. That's the first one, the chambers themselves. Now we get to the clue that gives a location. Jedi's answer to the king is precise in a way fiction doesn't need to be. He says he does not know the number of the chambers, but he knows where the information is kept. He tells Khufu that the count is written down and that the document sits inside a chest made of flint in a room called the inventory, in the ancient city of Heliopolis, the city of the sun, just across the river from where Cairo stands today. Think about what's actually being described. A restricted archive, a specific building with a name, the inventory, which in Egyptian is sipti, essentially a records office, a specific container, a chest of flint, a material chosen because it's nearly indestructible, and inside it, a document containing measurements and counts of sealed chambers. The mainstream interpretation says this is a storytelling device, a quest object. But that interpretation has a problem. Egypt really did keep archives exactly like this. Temple inventories, building records, and sacred plans were real administrative documents, stored in real annexes of real temples, and Heliopolis was the intellectual capital of the Old Kingdom. The story isn't inventing a fantasy library. It's describing the actual information infrastructure of the Egyptian state, and saying that the plans of the secret chambers were filed inside it, behind restricted access. Not a myth, not a metaphor, a filing system. Then comes the third clue. And this is the one that haunts researchers, because it's a date, or as close to a date as the ancient world ever gives you. When Khufu demands that Jedi bring him the chest, the old man refuses. He says he cannot bring it and that he is not the one who will. The knowledge, he says, will be carried to the king by the eldest of 3 children not yet born, 3 brothers who will one day rule Egypt. The rest of the papyrus tells of their birth. And here's the twist. Those 3 children are not fictional. The names given in the papyrus are Userkaf, Sahur, and Neferukari, the first 3 kings of the 5th dynasty. Real men, real reigns, verified by king lists and by their own monuments at Saqqara and Abu Sir. So follow the logic of the text itself. The location of the secret chambers is locked away during Khufu's reign. Khufu never gets it. The text implies the knowledge only transfers when the 4th dynasty, the dynasty of the Giza pyramids, comes to an end and a new royal line begins. That transition happened around 2490 BC. Which means the papyrus is doing something no one expected from a book of fairy tales. It is bracketing a window of time. It is telling you that whatever those chambers were, access to them closed with the founding of the 5th dynasty. The chambers were sealed, the plans were locked in flint, and then the dynasty that built Giza disappeared. It was sealed, it was documented, and then it was forgotten. Now, for 200 years, there was no way to test any of this. You cannot excavate the story. The Great Pyramid had 3 known chambers: the subterranean chamber cut into bedrock, the Queen's Chamber, and the King's Chamber, and the academic position was firm. That was all there was. Anyone who suggested additional sealed spaces was waved off into the fringe. Then, modern science found something that changed everything. In 2015, an international team launched the Scan Pyramids mission, a collaboration between Egyptian, French, and Japanese institutions, including Cairo University and the Hip Institute. Their method sounds like science fiction, but is rigorous physics. Muon radiography. Muons are particles created when cosmic rays strike the upper atmosphere. They rain down constantly, and they pass through stone, but solid rock absorbs more of them than empty space does. Place detectors around a pyramid, count the muons coming through from every angle, and the voids inside reveal themselves as bright spots. No drilling, no damage, just particle physics reading the inside of a mountain of stone. In 2016, the team detected thermal anomalies on the pyramid's north face. Then, in 2017, came the announcement that made the cover of the journal Nature. Above the Grand Gallery, deep inside the Great Pyramid, the detectors found an enormous void, at least 30 meters long, with a cross-section comparable to the Grand Gallery itself. 3 independent teams, using 3 different detection technologies, nuclear emulsion films from Nagoya University, scintillator hodoscopes from KAK, and gas detectors from the French Atomic Energy Commission, all confirmed it. They called it the Big Void. It was the first major internal structure found in the Great Pyramid since the 19th century. A sealed space, completely unknown, sitting inside the most studied building on Earth for 4,500 years. And the team found a second anomaly. Behind the massive chevron stones on the north face, above the original descending corridor, the muons revealed another hidden space. In March 2023, researchers confirmed it and even threaded an endoscope through a joint in the stones. The footage showed a corridor roughly 9 meters long, about 2 meters wide, with a gabled ceiling, unfinished, empty, leading nowhere that anyone can currently explain. Egypt's own head of antiquities at the time, Mostafa Waziri, suggested it might relieve structural weight, but admitted openly that no one is sure what lies beneath it. One prominent Egyptologist went further, saying he believes something important sits underneath that corridor, possibly even the true burial chamber of Khufu. Because here's a fact most people don't know. Khufu's mummy has never been found. The sarcophagus in the king's chamber was empty. The man who built the largest tomb in human history is officially missing from it. So hold the two things side by side. A papyrus in which Khufu obsessively hunts for the design of secret sealed chambers to incorporate into his own pyramid. And a pyramid that, when finally scanned with particle physics, turns out to contain sealed chambers that match no known plan. Not similar in spirit, not loosely reminiscent. Hidden chambers in Khufu's monument that were closed before the structure was finished and never opened again. Here's where it gets strange, because the scanning didn't stop at the pyramid's body, and neither does the trail of resistance. In the early 1990s, a geophysical survey was conducted around the Sphinx, just down the plateau from Khufu's pyramid. Seismic readings reported anomalies in the bedrock, including what was described as a rectangular cavity several meters beneath the front paws. The survey was not followed up with excavation. The team's access ended, and the anomaly was never drilled, never confirmed, never disproven. It simply sits there in the data. Then there's the Osiris shaft, a vertical complex sunk 30 meters into the bedrock beneath the causeway between the pyramids. Egyptian archaeologist Selim Hassan documented it in the 1930s, but it was flooded with groundwater and largely ignored for decades. When it was finally pumped out and excavated in 1999, the lowest level revealed a chamber with a massive sarcophagus surrounded by traces of water channels, a design unlike standard tombs on the plateau. It had been sitting under the feet of millions of tourists the entire time. And in late 2025, the Scan Pyramids team announced yet another finding, this time at the Pyramid of Menkaure, where measurements suggested the possibility of a second unknown entrance behind anomalous stonework. Each time, the pattern repeats. An anomaly is detected, headlines flare, then access tightens, funding shifts, and the question goes quiet. The Big Void was confirmed in 2017. As of today, no human has entered it. No camera has seen inside it. 9 years of silence around a 30-meter void in the most famous building on the planet. The report wasn't refuted. It was just left open. Now, does this prove the most extreme version of the story? Probably not. Let's slow down and be honest, because the skeptical case deserves a fair hearing. The Westcar Papyrus is, by genre, a literary text. The 5th dynasty kings were known when it was composed, so the prophecy of their birth is almost certainly written after the fact, a piece of political storytelling justifying a new dynasty. The secret chambers of Thoth may be a theological idea, the hidden knowledge of the God of wisdom, rather than a physical floor plan. The big void may be a construction feature, a relieving space that let builders manage the colossal weight above the Grand Gallery. The north face corridor may exist to protect the original entrance from collapse. Unfinished spaces, sealed for engineering reasons, with no treasure and no lost archive inside. That is the grounded explanation, and it might be the correct one. But that doesn't make the discovery ordinary, because even the grounded version concedes something remarkable. It concedes that the Great Pyramid contains major internal spaces that were deliberately sealed during construction and erased from all surviving records. It concedes that a story copied for 1,000 years preserved the memory of a king obsessed with hidden chambers, restricted documents, and the architecture of secrecy, and that this memory attached itself to precisely the one monument where modern physics later found hidden chambers. Either the papyrus is a coincidence of staggering precision, or it carries a thread of genuine Old Kingdom memory. The memory that parts of Giza were never meant to be entered. That the plans existed once, in a chest, in an archive, in a city now buried under modern Cairo. Heliopolis today lies beneath the suburbs of Mataria. Its temple archive, the real inventory, has never been found. If the chest of flint survived, it is under someone's street. And if that's true, it means our history is missing a chapter. It means the people of the Old Kingdom didn't just build the pyramid. They managed information about it. They decided what would be recorded, what would be sealed, and what would survive only as a story safe enough to tell out loud. It means the fairy tale was the vault. Knowledge too sensitive for the archive was dissolved into entertainment, where it could pass through 1,000 years of hands without anyone thinking to destroy it. And it leaves one question that no scan has answered. The papyrus says Khufu wanted the design of the secret chambers for his own monument. The scans say his monument contains secret chambers. So, did he ever get the answer he was looking for? Is the big void Khufu's copy of the sanctuary of Thoth built from plans pulled out of that flint chest after all? Is his missing body lying inside it right now, 30 meters of stone away from the tourists climbing the Grand Gallery? No one knows, because no one has looked. Tonight, the papyrus rests in Berlin under glass, 12 columns of faded ink that almost nobody reads, and 4,000 kilometers away, above the Grand Gallery of the Great Pyramid, there is a dark space the length of a passenger jet cabin that has not felt air move through it since the reign of Khufu. The detectors see it. The physicists confirmed it. The papyrus perhaps remembered it. It is still there, still sealed, still waiting for the question Khufu asked an old man 5,000 years ago to finally be answered. If this investigation pulled you in, the next one goes even deeper. Watch the next investigation on screen now.